Have you ever felt subtly influenced, perhaps without even realizing it?
Like a quiet whisper, maybe, guiding your thoughts?
Yeah, or an unseen hand sort of shaping your choices. Welcome back to Hypnosis by Design.
Where we really dig into how influence and persuasion work.
Today, we're on a mission, you could say, to understand what we've started calling covert hypnosis.
The idea that everything, really, from our thoughts to our choices, can be shaped by design.
And that there's, well, often an agenda behind it all.
Definitely.
We're going to explore two really fascinating, and I have to say, sometimes unsettling sets of documents.
Yeah, one takes us into that clandestine world of behavioral modification experiments by the CIA, Project MKUltra.
Right. And the other, kind of surprisingly, comes from a foundational text on public relations and persuasion, Edward Bernays' 1928 book, Propaganda.
And Bernays argues there that modern society is subtly guided by what he calls an invisible government.
It's quite a mix.
What's truly compelling here, I think, is how these two, well, seemingly disparate sources.
One from intelligence, one from PR.
Exactly. How they converge on this, frankly, chilling realization that much of what we perceive as reality, even our choices, can be shaped by forces we're, rarely aware of.
So we'll explore not just what happened, but maybe more importantly, why understanding these mechanisms is crucial for you listening right now.
Absolutely.
Our main sources for this deep dive are pretty powerful. We've got congressional testimony regarding Project MKUltra, laying bare some of that secret history.
And then revealing excerpts from Edward Bernays' really groundbreaking book, Propaganda.
Okay, so let's begin then with Project MKUltra.
Right.
This was the CIA's highly secret program, running roughly from 1953 to 1964.
And it was focused on research into behavioral modification, drug acquisition, and crucially, the surreptitious administration of substances.
And it wasn't just one single thing, was it? It was more like a big umbrella project.
That's right, covering many, many subprojects. And what makes it so disturbing is its deeply covert nature. I mean, this wasn't about asking for volunteers.
No.
American citizens were drugged without their knowledge or consent, period.
And the full extent, we still don't really know, do we?
No, largely because the records, almost all of them, were deliberately destroyed back in January 1973.
Destroyed? By whom?
Under the instruction of the CIA Director at the time, Richard Helms. So later congressional inquiries, they really struggled.
I can imagine.
But the discovery later of some financial documents, that did provide some new, albeit incomplete, insights into the program's scope and, frankly, the ethical abyss it represented.
The idea of unwitting testing is it's deeply unsettling. How did they actually manage to carry this out? Where did this happen?
Well, the documents show the CIA used various institutions. We're talking university facilities, personnel, pharmaceutical companies, hospitals, state and federal institutions, even private research organizations.
And these places knew the CIA was involved?
Often. No, that's the key.
No.
These institutions, the individuals working there, were frequently entirely unaware that the CIA was sponsoring the research.
Wow. So you could be a scientist thinking you're doing important work.
Exactly. Contributing to open knowledge, you think, only to find out later your work was secretly funded by an intelligence agency.
Yeah.
He really speaks to how pervasive their operations were during that Cold War era.
That's already disturbing enough. But I understand the documents show the drug testing wasn't just happening in labs.
No, it gets even darker. The covert administration of these drugs wasn't confined to academic or medical settings.
Okay.
Newer documents confirmed what some had suspected.
Right.
Unwitting drug testing was carried out in what they call safe houses.
Safe houses? Like spy movie stuff?
Pretty much. In San Francisco and New York City. And they even experimented on, get this, criminal sexual psychopaths confined at a state hospital.
That's horrific, targeting such a vulnerable group.
Absolutely. People often unable to advocate for themselves.
So moving beyond the LSD experiments, which are probably the most famous aspect, there's this recurring theme in fiction, the truth serum. Did MKUltra look into that?
Oh, they definitely looked into it. But here's the thing. Despite the popular idea, no such magic brew actually exists.
Really? So it's just a myth?
Largely, yes. While they did explore drugs like scopolamine and barbiturates for interrogation, and police even use them, sometimes they are far from reliable.
How so?
While scopolamine, for instance, it tended to cause confusion, disorientation, hallucinations, or really dry mouth.
Yeah.
Hardly ideal for getting clear information.
Doesn't sound very useful.
Right. And barbiturates, they could disrupt a subject's defenses, sure, but the documents say the output was contaminated by deception, fantasy, and garbled speech.
So not exactly truth-telling.
No. The real vulnerability these drugs seem to create was more about the subject's belief afterwards. They might think they revealed more than they actually had.
Ah, I see. More psychological manipulation then.
Precisely. And well-adjusted people with strong defenses. They can often resist even when heavily drugged, a state called narcosis.
Okay, so beyond drugs, what other avenues did they explore for this behavioral modification? It sounds like they were trying everything.
They absolutely were. The scope was incredibly broad. They looked into electroshock,
Oh, wow.
various harassment substances, motivational studies, polygraph research, and even, this is a strange one, the magician's art.
The magician's art, what does that even mean?
Well, Admiral Turner, who later became CIA director, he interpreted that phrase as, and I quote him loosely here, how to slip the Mickey into the fin.
Okay, so basically, how to secretly drug or incapacitate someone.
Exactly. Mastering subtle, undetectable ways to influence people, almost like a stage magician uses misdirection. It really shows the lengths they considered.
That's quite chilling.
And there was also mention of a highly controversial perfect concussion subproject.
A perfect concussion.
Yeah, the idea was to cause amnesia without leaving any physical marks.
Yeah.
Though the CIA claimed this particular one was never actually funded.
Still, the fact they even conceived of it, it paints a really disturbing picture of this relentless pursuit of mind control.
It really does.
It's just chilling to think about the human cost behind all these government experiments. It sounds like a massive violation of rights.
A massive abridgment, yes, with tragic consequences for some.
What about the ethics? Was there any oversight, or was it just completely missing?
It really points to a fundamental disregard for human life, and certainly informed consent. The testing continued for years after the dangers of giving people LSD without telling them were well known.
Even after they knew the risks.
Yes, even after internal criticism, like following the death of Dr. Frank Olson in 1953, which the DCI, the Director of Central Intelligence, flagged internally in 1954.
So they knew, but continued.
It seems so. Now, Admiral Turner, testifying much later in 1977, was unequivocal. He stated that such experimentation on humans is now verboten.
Forbidden, basically.
Right, and that current oversight is many, many-fold stronger now. There are thorough procedures, an intelligence oversight board. He also stated clearly that no experimentation with drugs on humans, witting or unwitting, is being conducted or supported by the CIA today.
Well, that's definitely a relief to hear about the increased oversight now.
Mm-hmm.
But even with stronger rules, do these past examples like MKUltra suggest a kind of fundamental vulnerability we still need to be aware of?
I think so, absolutely. The urge to influence or control, especially when there's a perceived crisis, that can be a powerful thing. Understanding these past abuses helps us recognize why ongoing vigilance and strong oversight are so important, even in a different time.
That's a good point, and it kind of brings us to a different but maybe equally powerful kind of influence.
Right.
Because while MKUltra shows us the really dark side of covert influence, there's another force, often right out in the open, yet still incredibly subtle.
You're talking about Edward Bernays.
Exactly, often called the father of public relations. He really laid bare how influence operates in plain sight, and he wasn't afraid of the word propaganda. How'd he define it? What was his take?
Well, Bernays defined propaganda pretty simply as any effort directed systematically toward the gaining of public support for an opinion or a course of action.
Okay, so quite broad.
Very broad. And crucially, he argued it wasn't inherently good or bad. Its moral value, he said, depended entirely on the merit of the cause it promoted and the accuracy of the information used.
Interesting, so not automatically negative.
Not for him. He even pointed out that Scientific American had called for its restoration to respectable usage. He saw it as a legitimate, even necessary function in modern society for any group with beliefs to make them known.
And his concept of the invisible government, that's particularly striking.
It is.
He believes society is invisibly governed by a small number of persons who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind.
Who harness old social forces and contrive new ways to bind and guide the world.
Yeah, it sounds almost conspiratorial when you first hear it.
It really does, but he presented it as necessary. How did he justify that? He argued this invisible government is necessary to the orderly functioning of our group life. His point was, without some organization and direction, individual choices would just lead to confusion. Imagine everyone trying to decide everything independently all the time.
Right, chaos.
Exactly. Whether in politics or just everyday life, he firmly believed and wrote, propaganda is here to stay. For him, it wasn't necessarily about tricking people, but more about shaping the environment to guide collective action, especially given how complex society was becoming and how fast ideas could spread with modern communication.
Bringing order to the chaos, in his view.
That seems to be the idea.
Okay, so let's get into the mechanics then. How did he think public opinion could actually be shaped? He seemed very interested in human motivation.
Deeply interested. He believed people are rarely aware of the true reasons behind their actions.
Like buying a car.
Right. His example. A man might say he buys a car for technical reasons, transport, but the real reason might be social status, or pleasing his wife, or just keeping up with friends who bought one. Hidden desires.
So how did the successful propagandist, according to Bernays, tap into those hidden desires, not just the surface reasons?
Well, Bernays explained that effective influence isn't just about telling people what to think directly. It's more about creating circumstances.
Creating circumstances.
Yeah, situations that lead people to want to think or do something specific. Cultivating desire, but indirectly.
Can you give an example?
Sure. He talked about the new salesmanship.
Yeah.
Instead of shouting, "Buy bacon now," the modern approach would be to influence physicians to publicly recommend bacon as healthy.
Ah, leveraging authority.
Exactly. People trust doctors, so you create the circumstance where buying bacon feels like following sound medical advice.
Clever. Any other examples?
Plenty. Promoting velvet fashion, not by advertising velvet, but by getting Paris couturiers and high society leaders to wear it. That creates a trend that trickles down.
Okay, making it desirable by association.
Precisely. Or linking ivory soap to art and prestige by sponsoring sculpture competitions for school kids and professionals, judged by famous artists and educators. It's all about using what he called associative processes. Connect your product or idea to something people already value or aspire to.
And he also talked about groups, right? Society being made of interlocking groups.
Yes, economic groups, social groups, religious, cultural, political, all interconnected. And effective propaganda, he said, often works by appealing to these groups through their leaders.
Why the leaders?
Because the leader's interests often align with the outcome you want. His example was a railway helping chambers of commerce along its route build up their communities. Better communities mean more business for the railway. It's mutually beneficial.
I see. And this is where the Public Relations Council comes in. This new profession he was basically inventing.
That's right. This person acts as the agent who understands modern communication, understands group dynamics, and uses them to bring an idea to public consciousness, often acting as an outside expert to provide that indirect influence.
And this wasn't just for selling soap or bacon, was it? He saw this applying everywhere.
Absolutely, across all parts of society. In business, he stressed that success absolutely depends on public opinion. Think about launching stocks, for example.
Yeah.
Businesses must dramatize their personality and explain themselves to gain public confidence.
It's about shaping the company's image.
Exactly, how the public feels about the company.
And politics, obviously.
Clearly. Politicians can use propaganda, in his sense, to sway the public and dramatize issues effectively. He cited Thomas Masaryk, the first president of Czechoslovakia.
What did he do?
Apparently, Masaryk deliberately changed the date for celebrating Czech independence from a Sunday to a Monday.
Why?
Purely to ensure better press coverage and therefore greater public attention and receptivity. It's about engineering the best conditions for your message. Smart, in a way.
It is strategic.
And even areas like social services and education use these techniques actively. Think about public health campaigns, getting people to change habits, support parks, fight diseases. That's propaganda for a social good.
Right, changing behavior on a mass scale.
In universities, museums, they use it too, to attract funding, raise awareness of their importance, improve their public image. A museum shouldn't just sit there. It needs to actively interpret its treasures to the public, take the museum to the people.
Actively seeking attention and approval.
Not just presenting facts, but securing acceptance for causes and institutions.
Okay, so if we try and connect these two threads now, MKUltra and Bernays.
Right. If we connect this to the bigger picture, you see MKUltra as perhaps the extreme, definitely unethical application of trying to control human behavior by design. It highlights the potential for abuse when agendas are hidden and consent is just thrown out the window.
The dark side.
Definitely the dark side. Bernays, on the other hand, he sort of lays bare the underlying mechanics of how subtle systemic influence works in our everyday lives, often with our, unwitting participation.
Even if it's out in the open.
Exactly. Both sources, in their own ways, highlight that our consent, or at least our conscious awareness, is often bypassed. They are kind of two sides of the same coin. the deliberate shaping of public thought and action.
The seriousness of this whole topic, I think, really comes down to one key idea: awareness.
Hmm.
Both these sources, MKUltra and Bernays, they underscore the power of external forces to shape our realities. But the good news? Maybe. Understanding how these systems work is the first, most critical step in protecting ourselves from unwanted manipulation.
Foreknowledge is power.
That's what we mean when we say everything is hypnosis, and it's often by design. There's usually an agenda behind it.
Indeed. And it's interesting, even the MKUltra documents hint at this. They suggest the best aid to a defense against narco-interrogation is foreknowledge of the process and its limitations.
Knowing how it works helps you resist it.
Precisely. And that principle extends beyond just drugs. Understanding the history of covert manipulation helps us recognize the need for ongoing vigilance today.
And applying Bernays' insights to our everyday lives is just as powerful, isn't it?
Absolutely.
If we understand that there might be invisible governors, as he put it, and that circumstances are created to influence us, well, then we can start to critically analyze the messages we get bombarded with every day.
It means asking questions. Questioning the source, the framing, the underlying motives. What's the agenda here? Is this designed to make me feel a certain way or do something specific?
Thinking critically about the why behind the message.
Right. And it also means recognizing how group influence operates on us. Being aware of how our group loyalties, those associative processes Bernays talked about, and just the desire for social acceptance can sometimes bypass our rational thinking.
We're influenced by people we admire or what our friends are doing.
Exactly, or what seems to be the in thing in a certain circle. It's not always logical persuasion. It's often about resonating with the groups we belong to or maybe want to belong to.
That makes sense. And seeking out diverse information seems crucial too.
Paramount. Don't just rely on one source or one sifter of data, as Bernays might have called it. Actively expand your inputs. Challenge your own assumptions. Look for different perspectives.
That proactive critical thinking, that's really our best shield in this world that's constantly trying to shape our perceptions.
Couldn't agree more. And this raises a really important question for everyone listening. In this age of information overload, constant digital nudges, understanding these historical examples and these foundational theories of persuasion, it isn't just some academic exercise.
No, it feels very relevant.
It's essential for navigating the modern world and making choices that are genuinely informed. It's how you move from being sort of passively influenced to actively engaging with the world.
So to quickly recap then, we've looked into the shocking history of covert mind control attempts under Project MKUltra, American citizens unwittingly drugged, manipulated.
And we've also peeled back the curtain on the pervasive design nature of modern persuasion, as articulated so clearly by Edward Bernays, where this invisible government subtly pulls the wires of public opinion.
Two powerful examples of influence by design.
So maybe a final thought to consider. If everything is hypnosis and it's by design, how much of what you believe is your own original thought might actually be a kind of created circumstance? And how does just knowing that potentially change your perspective on your own choices going forward?
That's definitely something to reflect on. The journey to becoming well-informed, it really does start with awareness.
It does.
So if this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, if it's given you some valuable insights, please take a moment to like this episode, subscribe to Hypnosis by Design if you haven't already.
And share with others who you think might be curious about these unseen forces shaping our world.
Because helping more people become well-informed, that's really how we collectively strengthen our ability to navigate this designed world around us.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.